back to Titan Review. We're talking with UD Mercy head coach Chris Coleman. We're checking in our second show of the 2024 season. Chris, we're going to talk a little bit about defense today, and we're talking on a weekend when defense is not being played very well in the NFL football championships. But let's just kind of size up. You've been now in about 10 days of practice, kind of sum up where defense is for this year as compared to last year.
Well, if we go from kind of back to front, we've got 6 really competent goalies, which is a crazy number to say, but I would feel pretty comfortable putting any of them in. So that race has kind of elevated the level. Having Tyler Hart, who kind of rose to the occasion a lot last year, saw a lot of rubber. Hemi saw a lot of rubber last year, and kind of the way we played. Now having Tyler as a coach, he's really pushing that unit to a higher level. So that's interesting to see. We've got Evan DeVito back playing defense, which we didn't have him last year. He had a year off last year, so we're a little bit stronger back there. I think Sean Henneggy, if you've ever looked at progress and development in lacrosse, a kid from Lake Orion who almost was a small scholarship player, but really a filler type kid that has just turned into, I think, you're going to see probably one of the best defensemen in the league. He learned it by being under fire for a year last year, and man has really stuck to his guns, increased his speed and his strength, and done a nice job. So we'll be stronger back there. And then we've got 3 or 4, and Noah Martin, who I think you're going to talk to, is a real leader on the team, and we've got 3 or 4 other guys. I'll tell you, for the first time in a very, very, very long time, I think we've got 6 defenders or even 7 guys that could fill in at the level we were at last year. Not that that was a good level, but it's really nice to have some depth at defense, which we've never really had, especially coming out of COVID. We had that probably before COVID, so we're finally back with that level of competition and practice every day. Joey Schmaltz and KG. There's just go on about all of them. We've brought back some folks at D-Midi, so Kyle Loken's been a leader at that. We have a coach that's probably one of the best in the world at it. He's really mentoring those guys, and we've got a unit there too. So we have these units which we didn't have the last 2 years. So that's been a really good thing for us. So we've kind of got a unit at D-Midi that goes pretty deep, a unit at close defense, and a unit at goalie, which is just a lot of competition at practice. You'd love to see them all play in a game. Probably doesn't happen, but man, do they compete every day in practice. And it's good to see, and they're really good kids. So we look to be stronger there than we have in the past. I know lacrosse is becoming an offensive game, as most sports are, I think we're going to be a little bit stronger there. We'll be stronger in transition, and it'll be something we can be proud of, I think, this year.
So much to unpack there. I'm going to start with the first one was a small scholarship. It's pretty much all college scholarships for lacrosse are small. There's not
especially at UD, yeah.
There's not a lot of NIL scholarships available where the kid's getting $300,000 to be able to play offensive backup tackle at Western Michigan. But I get that part of it. So
it's never life changing by any means, but it's something, and it's something to hang your hat on. But it's just great to see a kid that developed that much. Where I put him up with anybody in our league. From a kid that could have gone a lot of different ways. We love seeing kids like that develop, especially a local kid.
Okay, so I got about 12 questions, but let's start with the simplest of one. Statistically, last year in the ASUN, you were towards the bottom. You're a defensive coach, so that's got to be a little more prideful than because that's your calling card as a coach, and you've always had unbelievably difficult, it's really tough defenses in your tenure that you've been at UDM. So you go out this past year to recruit. Were you looking for a specific type player? And what is it you're doing with the current guys you have to change? Are you changing schemes? What is it that you're going to make yourself better?
No, we thought we were close last year. But we had Evan came, had to take a year off for some personal reasons. And that kind of set the tone early on. We also, we're in between strength coaches, right? Which I'm a huge believer in the power of strength and conditioning, especially in defense. And I can tell you at U of D, they spend more time in that than they do actually practicing. I think it's such an important part of defense. And like having Sam, our strength and conditioning coach, I mean, it's like a different program now that we've had him for a full year. He came in, mid-year last year. So we went 2 seasons with some transition there. And we had somebody they left, they had somebody they left, and we never really got going into a full program. So now we're going to see that for the first time, in a couple of years. And we're hoping for a different result. And they're playing tough, and we're evolving and changing. But yeah, no, that bugged me, right? And offense and defense has a lot to do with each other. If you're not spending that much time playing offense, you're spending a lot of time playing defense. And with the development of lacrosse in general, like you just can't spend that much time playing defense anymore, right? Like if you're turning the ball over a bunch of times, you're going to be back on defense over and over again. The levee's going to break no matter what. In a collegiate game, there's so many great players now and so many great shooters. So you have to take care of the ball in offense and play complementary lacrosse as you see in football, right? Like that seems to be the key on some in a day like today. That seems like to be the teams that are winning. They have a little bit stronger defense and offense, right? So
offensively, you guys were in terms of possession time, offensively was again at the bottom of the ASUN last year, which obviously puts more stress on the defense.
yeah.
But the question is, you have always played a very aggressive, slapping kind of style defense, much more typical than other places, and it's been sort of a calling card. Can you play that kind of defense if you don't have the athletes?
No, you can't, right? And if you're not conditioned enough, right, there's no way you can do it, right? So that all, while we tried to take care of it and we had to, negotiate kind of how that all went between our strength and conditioning program and not step on feet of other people and to kind of work through that issue. The kids did the best they could with it, but yeah, I mean, I always, that style came out of the fact that, if we were going to turn the ball over a lot, which has been a traditional thing at U of D, we were going to get the ball back more, right? So, in the MAC where we were, as good athletes or better, that was a great system to have, right? But when you're playing teams with more scholarships and the Utahs of the world and the Air Forces of the world that just have a bigger situation going on than you do. Yeah, you have to adjust a little bit. So we've adjusted. We're smarter with it, but it has a lot to do with. I think last year had a lot to do with transition too early on. We weren't great in transition. Transition is such a big part of the game that you can have a stop or two, and if you give the ball back right away, you're typically going to get scored on a lot. That happened a lot last year. So we've worked on that a ton. I think we're a lot cleaner early on. We cleaned it up towards the end, but it was too late, So
in the lexicon of Coach Cullen's vocabulary, is the four-letter word zone a dirty word, or is it part of what now is the toolbox?
No, we've always had it, and we used it a little bit. We use it situationally. Again, but if you're not playing that much offense and you're playing zone, you're also setting yourself up to die a slower death, right? So, you have to. We're always trying to do the best we can to put ourselves in the best situation to win a game and to put the kids in the best situation. So we have put everything on the table. I can tell you, one of our mantras this year is, everything should be different, right? Everything, we don't, as much as I even think I know everything at times about coaching in Detroit, I ask myself, maybe I don't. And we're always evaluating kids ourselves as coaches, what we're doing defensively, offensively, because if we keep thinking the same way all the time, we're going to have the same results. So we've never ever done that. But I can tell you there's more of an emphasis on it this year than ever before, because we don't want the same results.
Okay, let me take you to the crease. You've got 6 goalies, which I don't think is typical of most college teams. And I understand that you're trying to figure it out. Goalie is a very subjective position if you don't have statistical information to back it up. Pretty simple. My question to you is, you're looking at all these 6 goalies, and you've got relatively short order here. You're going to be playing scrimmages at Notre Dame and then on the road to Marquette. How do you evaluate those goalies without, I mean, it's just being judged on the eye, but what is your process for judging who's going to start and who's going to be the backup?
Well, I'll tell you, these kids have done an amazing job. They're supportive but competitive to each other, that group. I wish, if we had like a camera following them all the time, it would be, we'd have a $1 million show with their level of personality and how they manage it. But, they're putting an extra 35 to an hour in at practice compared to everyone else because we're getting them the shots they need, right? There's only so much time in an hour and 30, hour and 45, 2 hour practice to get that many guys shots. So we're putting extra time into them. And it's really, I tip my hat to Tyler, who really believes in giving an honest evaluation of everybody. So we're just putting a lot more time into that. One, we're hoping that it develops them. And then two, it gives them an evaluation. So development first and evaluation second is kind of how we have to do it. And it's just a lot more time.
Okay.
Out there, those kids are showing up to campus at 6 a.m. They're getting out on the field at 6:45. We don't start practice till 7:30. It's pretty impressive.
Okay. It was not the question I asked. And here's the point. It was really nice talking about they all get along and it's great, sort of preseason coachees in conversation. What do you evaluate those kids in those practices and what separates them when you don't have the statistical information and it's really the eye of what you see?
Well, we film practice, right? So you got to look at practice. You got to look at the shots they get at practice, which they all get enough. And the one thing I is always a statement to, especially to my Michigan kids, is I think a lot of kids from the Midwest don't realize how important every rep is, right? So, you have a limited amount of reps in college lacrosse, limited amount of games. So you have to get as close to perfect as possible. So it's two things. It's your stopping ratio and your clearing ratio, right? Like if you're a great stopper, that's awesome. But if if you're giving the ball back and you can't make a good pass and you're not smart. And the third step is having, how comfortable the guys in front of you are, right? And what's the synergy there? So, we give everybody that opportunity and we keep asking questions. But I'll tell you that's the three indexes, right? And you're going to get those in practice, and that's the best you can do, right?
Is part of that decision also gut for you from your standpoint of just watching?
Again, I wouldn't call it gut, I'd call it group. So I mean, we've got a coaching staff that sits in our office, and we spend a good every day talking about goalie performance, watching the practice, watching the tape, watching everything we can on them.
Okay.
Because we like all of them.
No, and I get that, but that's obviously a different answer than what we had originally thought. And so that's there is metrics for the decision, and I think that's the most important point. So if you're looking at it, there's at least an evaluation process other than, in high school, sometimes you pick the best kid you got, and you might have two or three, and there's two kids that can't, function as well as maybe the third, and off you go. It's a little bit different from that perspective.
Yeah, I'm not one I'm not one. I don't believe in the whole splitting goalies thing unless you have to, which we did a little bit last year, which is not typically something I do. But again, I'm trying to be open to anything and everything that's going to put us in a position to be successful. And we'll see. So we're gonna, we'll see how this goes against Notre Dame, and we'll see.
Do you let goalies play through not prolonged slumps, but do you let goalies play through, since you've only got a 13 or 14 game season, do you let goalies have that opportunity? That's an interesting question because some coaches, it's a quick, it's a quick hook, and other coaches let it go. I guess it really depends on the goalie.
Gosh, I think, goalies and slumps and good and all that stuff, it's like, it's always such an emotional decision, right? And you got to think about the whole unit, the defensive unit in front of them and how they're going to take it. So I would say we handle it with care, right? In that situation, it's just a lot of communication and a lot of discussion. And it's not something that I would try to make it as least emotional, a very emotional decision in the least emotional way possible.
You made an interesting statement about your Coach Hart, is that he gives honest evaluations, and I have been a firm believer, as long as I've ever coached, that kids get it. Parents may not, and the observers on the outside may not, and they may not like to hear what is being told to them. but they will respect the answer if it's honestly as close to being the truth as it can be for the guy giving that information back. Kids aren't stupid; they get it. They really do.
With Hemi and Hart last year, I can tell you, Hemi was just, where we had some switching last year, and Hemi had some amazing games and had some games that weren't so great. Tyler had some amazing games, some games that weren't so great. And I know that, after the emotional, like, oh, this sucks, if something was bad, or, two guys that really supported each other and really did a nice job. If the other one was playing well, supporting them, and putting that kind of emotional baggage behind them real quick, and bearing it for the moment and carrying it with them wherever they carried it, and then getting over it, and having a new day the next day, and competing. So it's great to have leaders like that back there, kind of pressing that to the rest of them. So I feel pretty good about the unit this year.
I try to ask questions that somebody might learn from. So that's, I wasn't trying to be smart about asking the
Well,
question.
it's a great question. Yeah.
And I think it's
goalie's the
important.
toughest, is one of the tougher positions for us to make decisions as coaches,
Yeah.
right?
So the last follow up on goalies, if everything being equal, let's say you assume you have the two that you have that you can't make up your mind on, does size become a part of that discussion? Scott Rogers versus maybe somebody that might be smaller. Or is it at that point it becomes just a mental decision?
I gosh, you know what? I think at some point I got the three metrics.
Okay.
Saves. I bring it down to saves, clearing, and sitting down with. I've got some pretty experienced defensive guys that I trust with my life. I'll ask two or three of them, who do you guys want, and we go with that.
Okay. All right. Last question as it relates to defense, and that becomes defensive middies have become a very important part of the landscape than what they have even 5 years ago. There's, you can become Charlie Hayes, one of your assistant coaches, who was a PLL star as a defensive midi, has turned into a star because he plays that position. And so tell me about where your defensive middies are and how much of a part do they play in your defense this year and in a general concept of your overall defensive scheme.
I think it's the most important position on the field, right? You got your traditional, attackman who can score, face-off guy, goalie, right? That's the traditional three that you need to be really great at. But that D midi position is, make or break championship. That, like Kyle's been great. Will Marshall's great. Ewald is like going to be probably, I think, one of the better ones in the league. I think he had that development, bubble moment. And it's come out of darkness. A lot of, we had a lot of D midi reps last year, and those guys have come out of it and worked harder. And now with the strength and conditioning and behind us, that they're going to be a pretty good unit. And I really like it. It's it's like a lot of it, defense is managing failure, but especially at the D midfield, and it's such an important role because that's typically the short stick D mids are the guys that offenses are going after, and you're gonna get beat every once in a while, and you're gonna get beat more often than everyone else, right? So you have to have a short memory, and you have to be the right kind of guy. You have to be able to after maybe something bad happens, you get beat, the save is made that you're going up the field playing offense. Transition is such an important part of the game. Your main part, that's the main role for you. Maybe early offense is a main role for you. So I think it's the most exciting position on the field. I think it's the most important position on the field now. And if you're good at it, you have a chance in any game.
Is LSM the most important position on your team? Typically, we think of LSMs as being the most important. And you mentioned face-off attacks and goalies.
Yeah, I think LSMs are important, but what happens a lot of times if you have a good one, and we think we have some good ones, and it could be a lot of different people. We've got some really good ones. I think they get buried, right? So they have to be part of that unit, and they have to be really good with your close defensemen because typically guys aren't they're going after the other two, right? So they have to be kind of in that rotation and unit and be very smart about that. And also be aggressive on the wings and be great ground ball guys and run transition and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's the most athletic position on the field for sure.
And last question, defensively, as a defensive mind and a defensive player when you were at Rutgers and certainly grew up as a defenseman, do you take is it harder for you as a head coach? And I understand head coaches have to have a variety of hats they've got to wear, offense and defense and special teams. But when defense and offense perform poorly, does the defense performing poorly get you a little more than maybe the offense because it's so near and dear to your heart, or does it really matter?
I can tell you when I was an assistant coach when the defense played poorly, it got to me. When I did that my year in the PLL when the defense played bad, it got to me. For now, I really keep it at 10,000 feet. I am equally disappointed on both sides. That's the honest truth. And I try to go to where I think we need the most help, and that's where I kind of set my eyes on and try to help my coaches do the best they can with what we've got in players. And I can tell you, but to your point, like I've been spending a lot of time with the offense lately, and I try to say, well, this is what a defense is thinking. Like, this is what a defense would do. This is why you guys should do this, because this is how a defense is going to react. So definitely when I'm coaching offense, it's not, hey, just do this, but this is kind of why it would be a good decision for you to make a certain pass or decision on the field, because this is probably what's going to happen to you if you make this decision. So yes, how I coach is definitely from a defensive point of view, but I think that's a great way to coach offense too.
If you had a game tomorrow at 2:00, give us a quick description. You're pretty comfortable with your defense right now? You think you've made the strides you need to be in the last 18 months?
Yeah, I think that's our strength. That would be our strength right now. Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable that they're going to get some stops. I think, in lacrosse, in today's day and age, if you can, I think a measure is under 10. It doesn't matter if you're playing whoever you're playing, right? Like, if you can hold a team under 10, you've done a pretty good job. And, if you win a game, 9-5, both defenses played well, right? Like, that's just the way it goes with shot clocks and the way the game is called by officials and stick technology and all the things. So, man, if you can keep a team under 10, like, you've done a really good job. And that's where we kind of hope to be, right? You want to, and maybe that's an old way of thinking. That new number might be, you score 13, you let them score 12. I think that number has been creeping up over the years. I think that number is it's ingrained in me. That's a 1990s number, score 11, hold them to 10, right? That's still where my mind is, but probably in today's game, it's score 14, hold them to 13, right? That's probably a more realistic number if you were a handicapper or something like that.
So wrapping up, we're the last weekend in January. We head next week to a scrimmage at Notre Dame, if I'm not mistaken, first weekend in February. Am I correct?
Yeah, we're super excited for it. It's Coach Corrigan's big Midwest coaches conference, so we'll have a big crowd there of high school coaches and fans and things like that. It's a 10 in the morning scrimmage, so we're going to leave campus about 4:15 in the morning to get there about 8:30 and get warmed up. And they're such gracious hosts, other than the time this year, but they apologized for that. There's got a lot going on with football and baseball over there that day. But we're excited. It's a great test for us. It's playing the best team in the country, and we hope we rise to the occasion. So we're going to get some great film. We're going to be able to evaluate ourselves versus that kind of opponent, and get ourselves ready for a Marquette game after that.
Well, appreciate the time. We'll check in next week. It'll be after the scrimmage. We'll have some of an idea what transpires. That'll certainly be the case. And up next, we're going to have a chance to spend some time with your LSM converted to close defense, Noah Martin, and we'll be back with him in just a second. So thanks, Chris. Welcome back. We're talking with Noah Martin, who is a Vermont transplant through New York, private school, back to UD, and in his fourth year, a graduating senior coming up. And first of all, Noah, thanks for taking the time. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming season. But for you, you're going from LSM back to close defense, and maybe talk about that move and maybe a little bit about the upcoming season, because next week you're going to be at Notre Dame.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for having me on. Starting off, I came from LSM and now I'm playing close defense. Really my entire life I started off playing close defense, so I it helps me and it's always sort of been there for me. But being my size and my weight, I've moved to LSM and the way I can move and sort of because of my basketball background or my soccer background has sort of helped me be able to play aggressive, but where I lack in size, I can use in other ways.
You can't replace speed. That speed's the killer in every sport. We know that. Just watch football. I mean, I don't think
Yes.
that's a secret. Do you worry about being 6 foot, 170 pounds?
No,
Okay.
I've been that way my whole life. I've always been sort of undersized and found ways to use it.
How'd you get started in lacrosse?
In about fourth grade, I was introduced to it through a coach, and all of my best friends were playing, so I was just gradually gravitated towards it, and ever since then I've loved it, and I've just kept going, and yeah,
Of the soccer, basketball, and lacrosse, obviously you're playing collegiate lacrosse. Is that your
yeah.
favorite sport, or is soccer and basketball in there a 1 and 1A?
That's a good question. So basketball was my favorite sport originally, and I loved basketball. I grew up playing basketball through and through, and fell in love with lacrosse. Basketball is still slightly ahead, I think, but it comes with the territory, and then soccer falls in a third.
No, I get that. Now you went from obviously Vermont down to Trinity in New York, probably had to expand the opportunities in high school to see if you can't maybe find an opportunity. But if you think about Middlebury College, if you think of yours for University of Vermont, there's some really good lacrosse played in the state. There really
Yeah,
is.
definitely.
It
Yeah,
developed.
yeah, their coaches have helped me develop. For me personally, I needed something out of Vermont, as it was a little small for what I wanted and life after. So I found my way to Detroit, and it was one of the better moves I made.
And we should point out that 802 is also an area code.
It is. It's an area
So
code in my
I
in the
was
club.
when I see those numbers, I also think of Eminem and 313. You know,
Yep.
it's the
Oh, yeah,
movie and it's a very descriptive title. So
definitely.
from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Adjustments for you from LSM. Last year, you were the most disruptive player on the team. You were, I think, 11th in the league in turnovers, forced
Yep.
turnovers.
Thank you.
What is your mindset going from sort of LSM back to close defense? And I asked the question this way: we broadcast your games last year. You covered predominantly covered the other team's best attack. And when we used to have all state meetings, every defenseman that was described by his coach always played the best player on the other team. It didn't matter where it was. It's just kind of that standard. You got tired of hearing it because there was no statistical information. But you, in fact, did cover the best player from everybody. And that includes some pretty good players from Utah and Air Force, some pretty good attacks in some of those teams. So what's the mindset for you this year to go back to close? And what do you think the difference is for you?
I don't think a lot changes. Like you said, I sort of pride myself on playing the other team's best player and locking that person down no matter where they are in the field. And so that's where I feel about that. It doesn't change much for me. We still have the same goals, and we still have to get our job done at the end of the day. But it's nice being down with our D unit, and I'm excited to keep going with us.
Statistically, offense and defense last year had some tough times in the league. You're
Right,
towards the bottom statistically, and obviously defensively, that makes it worse because you spend more time on the field than the offense does.
right.
What do you guys have to do this year to sort of even the playing field? Defensively, what do you have to do to sort of even the playing field so that maybe the record is a little closer to 500 or even above than it is to be 2-11?
Yeah. I think this year we just need to have more production maybe on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. For us, it's hard when we just keep um the ball is always on our side of the field. It's sort of hard to I don't know what word I'm looking for. It's hard to just always be on the defensive side. And if we can help them by clearing or help them by stopping second chance opportunities or getting the ball to them more frequently, starting early offense, moving in transition, if we can give them more opportunities, it can really help us make that be a little better.
No, and I get that. With the kind of rides that are in college, the level you're playing, there's not a lot of one-man clears. Those don't
Definitely.
exist anymore. The guys are just
Exactly.
too fast and too skilled with the sticks that they're able to have that opportunity. So
Most
maybe with
definitely.
some of the better defensive midfielders you guys got coming back, some of the talent that was produced, we're hoping
Definitely.
for maybe a statistically better season, which will be your last, surprisingly, in the ASUN, because
Yeah,
you're not going to get a chance. You aren't going to get a chance to play in the NEC. So they're
I
kind of.
know.
Does that disappoint you at all?
Yeah, back on the East Coast, so I sort of closer to home. Parents can come to more games. People can be around more. But it's the ASUN is a very cool conference, and it's nice to be in that. And going forward, I would love to see what we have to do.
Last question. You're a business major at
Yes.
UDM. What's the 25-year-old Noah Martin look like? What's on the? I'm assuming professional lacrosse is probably not on the agenda, but what is a business
Yeah,
major from UDM? Where do you see yourself at 25?
that's a great question. I'm going into marketing, and I hope to. I don't know yet. I'm
Okay.
still figuring that
Oh
out.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
You,
No.
you're too
I
young to have an answer. I mean, I get that
Yeah.
part. There's so much emphasis at an early age to have to figure out. You got to be in Harvard leadership school before you're the age of 14. I get
Yeah.
that. Kids should take their time and make decisions that make some sense. So that's why that we'll leave it at there.
Definitely.
Well, listen, thank you for spending some time with us. We will get this up and posted, and we will certainly see you along the trail. Hopefully, we'll
Sounds
see you
great.
next week at in Notre Dame. And
Definitely.
thanks for your time, and have a great season.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye.